Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're doing well. Today I'm filming a recent reads video. I don't think I've done a recent reads video before, but that's because I was too lazy to film my January wrap up. So now we're at the end of February. We have like 2 days left and I'm like, recent reads video it is. This will be all of the books that I have read from January 1st till February 26th, 5th, something. And I'm just going to talk back through them. So I'm going to do my most recent book first, back to the first book of the year, because it's been 2 months. I don't remember those books as well. So I want the beginning of the video to be better because I don't think many of you are going to make it to the end. My most recent book that I finished, which was last night, was Ghostwood Song by Erica Waters. I have not heard many people talk about this. I think it's quite like an under the radar book. But my friend Lauren really loved it and she put it in like under hyped books video. So I was excited to give this a go. This young girl, Shady Grove, lives in this really cool place where it's like a forest, and then she lives in a trailer, and then her aunt lives in a house that's like the other side of the woods. It's really cool. And her dad died in an accident, but he used to play this fiddle, and this fiddle brought the dead to life because there are a lot of ghosts in this world that haunt different places. And everybody always tells you, that fiddle's gone, you don't want to focus your life on it. Your dad was obsessed with it. But one day her brother goes to prison for murder, and she knows he didn't do it in her head, even though all the evidence points against him. And so she needs to get the fiddle and ask, did her brother murder you? And so she needs to find this fiddle. She needs to learn how to use this fiddle, but the fiddle comes with these dangers that everybody keeps telling her about. But as she said, like, my dad wanted to teach me how to use this fiddle, so it clearly can't be that bad. And you just follow Shady Grove's journey. The book is pretty cool. You get a murder mystery, you get this really cool ghost creepy vibe with this forest, and to be honest, I was obsessed with the vibe of the book. But overall, I did give this a 3-star. I had a few problems. The main character, Shady Grove, is 16, and she feels so young. And at times she annoyed me because she was acting like a 4-year-old. And I was like, for goodness sake, you're meant to be 16, and I don't like reading about young characters. They just drive me nuts because I drove myself nuts at that age. So that was kind of one of the biggest problems for me, was the character age not being accurate, but also at times this book dragged. This was a 370-page book, I believe, and I think it should have been like 270. Shave 100 pages off it. There was a lot of filler, a lot of repetitive scenes, and I don't think it was necessary because the book was creepy, and it would have been even creepier without those filler scenes taking over. I really loved the family dynamic, even though it wasn't perfect and there were a lot of ups and downs, and I hated some people. Her mother. I enjoyed the concept, and 3 stars is a good rating. I just wish that it had shaved off all the filler elements and just been this really spooky YA mystery. The next book that I just finished was Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I also finished this yesterday. This is by Talia Hibbert, and it is the first in the Brown Sisters series, or like companion series. I read this for my romance reading vlog, which will hopefully be up already, but if not, soon. This was really, really good. I loved this. We follow Chloe Brown, who has like a near-death experience, but not really, and decides that when her life flashes before her eyes, she has a boring life. So she starts to write this list about things she wants to do before she dies. And then she meets her superintendent at her building, and I cannot remember his name, Red. They hit it off, and he starts helping her with all this list of things like camping and going on a motorcycle for a ride. I gave this a 4-star, and I do talk about my problems in the romance vlog. There is not a problem with the book per se. My issue is that every romance follows the same structure, which doesn't bother me at all because I like just a fluffy romance. Sometimes it's just what I fancy. You know how it's going to end and it makes you happy. But every romance at the end always has to have the breakup, the drama, the dramatic change that makes you think, oh, they're not going to be together. And I understand that you can't just have this romance all the way through that's just like perfect. I get it. But this drama was just shoehorned in right at the end because it had to follow the structure. And it was just so quick, just like, oh my god, we're getting close to the end. Put it in real quick. And it drove me nuts, and it stopped that surge of endorphins I was having, and I was like, great. It's not a 5-star anymore because you've just gone and ruined it for me. Not because I was mad that they had an argument or whatever. That's in every romance. I expected it. But it was so close to the end and just so unnaturally put into the book that it annoyed me. It was clearly there for the sake of it had to be there for structure. And this is more of a criticism on the romance genre than the book itself, but why do we have to keep following that structure? Who says? Why don't we have drama throughout the book randomly? And why does it have to be surrounding the main characters? Why can't it just be like a random drama on the side? Why can't we change it up? This is why I don't read a lot of romance, because I know how it's going to happen. I love the way it makes me feel very happy inside. But that's why I don't want the drama personally. It's just a me thing. So probably a little controversial, but that's how I felt about that. But it was still a 4-star, still very good. It's just, it dropped that 5-star in the last like 30 pages very quickly. I recently finished my first ever manga, and that is Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1 by Sui Ishida. This is about the ghouls who are like, they live like humans, but they eat human flesh. And you don't know who they are because they look like humans, but they get red eyes. And this boy at the beginning has like this encounter with a ghoul. And then there's a near-death experience, and the ghoul dies, and he almost dies, and then the organs get put into this boy from the ghoul, and so he becomes like a half ghoul, half human thing. And you then follow his journey of learning that he's becoming a ghoul and what that means for him. You've got to be really careful what you say, because I could spoil the whole manga here for you if I'm not careful. I am so uncultured when it comes to manga. Oh my goodness. I was like, I understood that you have to read it backwards. I knew that. But I was getting real confused by the boxes, because some of them are obviously obvious in which order you read them. But in other ones, some of them were like higher than others, but you had to read the others first. So I was Googling how to read it, and it was quite funny actually. It took me a long time, longer than it should have. But I've got the hang of it now. I think I understand. I'm excited to continue with future volumes. I gave it a 3-star overall. I would say that if you're new to manga, this was a good one to pick up. This is where the problem lies, where I'm doing this backwards, is sequels are coming first. So I'm going to change my order here. I read both of these books, one in January, one in February, but I don't want to talk about the sequel first. So I read Stogging Jack the Ripper by Kerry Maniscalco, and you can see a lot of tabs here. I read Kingdom of the Wicked last year, and it was my second favourite book of 2020, and I needed more of Kerry Maniscalco's writing. Historical fiction is definitely not my thing. I actually really don't like it. But I wanted to give it a go, and I'm really glad I did. This is so cool. It's YA because she's young, but the gore of like, she's a mortuary technician assistant, like learning to be one for her uncle. And it's kind of gory, you know. It doesn't hold back on those descriptions. Plus, we follow her on searching for the mystery of who Jack the Ripper is. And I really enjoyed that mystery of discovery and all that. There is this other character, like Thomas Creswell, and he gets to know our character Audrey Rose. And it's kind of like a romance that's not a romance, you know? It's just there. I don't ship it. Everybody seems to love Thomas Creswell, and I'm like, seems a bit like rude for me. I don't know. I wasn't his biggest fan. I really liked the reveal at the end. I thought it was great. I gave it a 4-star. Moving on to the sequel, Hunting Prince Dracula, didn't love as much. I already knew I didn't love it from the beginning because I didn't even start tabbing. I got my tabs already and I was like, I think I'm just going to read it. Audrey and Thomas go to this Romanian castle school, which is like Dracula's lair, apparently. You know, like that's what the rumours are. The vibe was very different to Victorian London instantly, and like, you know, you're just kind of thrown from London to Romania. There's no blending, and I found it very jarring. And I don't know, I knew they were going to travel here, but I just didn't. It was quite abrupt, and I was like, okay, never mind. The pacing was terrible in this book as well. Like, I'm just gonna say it. The pacing was awful. We spent like 100 pages blooming getting there, and then we see Audrey do the same thing day after day after day. Like, honestly, every day was the same thing. And I couldn't believe I was reading about the same thing again. I was like, surely this is accidentally being reread. I've gone back, haven't I? Because there's no way this has been written again twice. Like, at some points, the same sentence was used, and I flicked back and found the same sentence. I was like, you've literally reused the sentences on this page. It was so frustrating. Not like a sentence that could be reused often. It was like a very unique sentence, which is why I noticed it was out again. So I wasn't best pleased. I gave it a 3. It was probably like the low 3 spectrum, but was not best pleased. I'm kind of hoping that Escaping from Houdini becomes a better one. Next was a really, really fun read, and that was Killjoy by Holly Jackson. You can see this is tiny. It's a prequel to the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. So obviously in that we follow Pip. But for school, she wants to do this project on the murder of Andy and Sal. Like Sal apparently murdered his girlfriend Andy, and there's a whole thing about it. She doesn't believe it. Well, this is the prequel to that, on how she became to decide that was what she wanted to do. And basically her and her friends all do a 1920s dinner party style murder mystery game. Oh my god. Oh my god. This book is tiny. It is perfection. I gave it 5 stars. There's nothing to fault in it. It was so much fun to read. It was spooky. It was creepy. 1920s dinner party, and they talk about dominoes while at this 1920 dinner party. Perfect. If you've read the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, this is an absolute necessity for you. And if you haven't, this is an absolute necessity for you. What are you doing? Next we have Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan McGuire. My rating's kind of like changing in my mind over this. It's the 6th installment of the Wayward Children series, and we follow Regan on her journey to the Hooflands, where there's like unicorns and everything. It's fun. I gave this a 4 star, and it would be like a very low 4 star or a high 3 star. I'm torn because the actual story was fabulous going through. I really enjoyed the found family aspect. But the more I think about it, the more I didn't like this book as much as I thought I did, because the ending is non-existent. And if you've read it, you'll know what I mean. Like, it's not just an anticlimactic ending. I was getting closer to the end, right? And I was thinking, how have we only got like 40 pages left? And then I was like, okay, we have 20 pages left. And then it ended, and I was like, okay. So there really was no end. I'm not exaggerating. If you've read it, you will know what I mean. There's no end. And I'm sure some people aren't going to be bothered by that. And initially I wasn't bothered, because I was like, do you know what? It's fine. I really like the rest of the story. The next book. A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. I wish I could talk about this Cursebreaker series in a big review, and I could, but I don't remember enough about it. But this is the 3rd installment of the Cursebreaker series, and the final installment. Now, the first one, A Curse of Dark and Lonely, I gave a 4 star, and I really loved it. And if it wasn't for the first half being a little slow, I would have given it a 5 star. The second book, I gave a very low 3 star. I had a lot to complain about. It's probably more like a 2. I gave a lot of criticisms. Yeah, I thought the second book was a filler book, so I hoped this wouldn't be the same. And it wasn't, but it was still bad. I can't tell you what it's about, obviously, but it was horrible. The way it ended, I'm sorry, what? It was the most, it was such an obvious could have been ending that I never imagined they would choose to go that way. I can't believe they chose to go that way. Like, what a cop-out. I'm furious about it. I don't know how to say this without spoiling anything, but like, the love interests can leave. I don't care. I don't like any of the characters by the 4th book. By the 4th book? This is the 3rd book. My review for the 1st book, I'm pretty sure, is just I'm obsessed with Grey. And I was. By the 3rd book, I also hate Grey. I can't explain to you how much the characters change between the trilogy, and not in like, oh, they got character development, oh, a great character arc. No, they're just terrible people. And it upsets me to say this, obviously, because I wanted to love this series, and I thought the 2nd book was just like a one-off where it'd be like rubbish, but I'd live with it. No, this is just really not it for me. I'm glad if you love it, like, more the power to you. I'm so glad. But I'm really disappointed and very hurt by the way this series went, to be honest. And I never want to see it again. The next book that I read was The Crowfolk by Mark Stay. I have got rid of my copy. I gave it to someone else to read because it was an arc, so I thought that would be good for them. I did a whole Instagram review on this, so I will put my Instagram here and you can go and check that out if you'd like to, where I went into detail. But I'll give you a brief thing here. It's based in this little village where it's like I say a close-knit village. Some of them hate each other, but it still has that really small village vibe. And the prologue is so creepy. Like, this pumpkin man comes to life, and there's a bunch of pumpkin people who are on the, like, way to kill everyone. And then in this village, we're following this girl called Feb Wrap, and she's really young. Oh, well, she's not really young. I think she's 17, but she reads like she's 11. So I wasn't a big fan of that. As I've just said, I don't like characters that read too young. I hate it. And she did, but the book was so cool in the way it wrote, in the way it read. It was like, it's one of those things that's all age groups. Like, you could read this to any age group and you probably really enjoy it. But but it was the discovery of like magic, and it's based in the time of the war, and Faye has found her mother's witch book, all while trying to defeat these pumpkin men. Now, I don't want to say any more about it because I don't know what else to say. It's a bit of like a whirlwind of things, but it's so magical and enjoyable, and I can definitely see a lot of adults, young adults and children loving this book. Honestly, it was really, really good. Very creepy, but in like a good way. I don't know how to be creepy in a non-good way. I really, really liked it. I did give it a 3-star overall, but like a higher end of the 3-star. I really liked it, and I really liked the writing style as well. But as I said, there is a review on my Instagram where you can go and check it out. The next book that I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses, and we're going to get a big rant here. This is by Sarah J. Maas. This book was spoiled for me a long time ago, and probably everybody else, not because the plot spoiled, but because everybody talks about how obviously Feyre and Tamlin are the main characters of this book. And not to continue the spoiling of the book, but everybody always does bring in Rhysand and how Tamlin's trash. But I've just gone and added to the spoilery content, I'm sorry. But I have to rant about this. What people forget is that your fan art and your tweets about hating on these people spoils things. And I, like a lot of other people I've discovered, didn't love this book as much as they could have because we knew what was coming. And it drives me crazy. Like, currently with The Court of Silver Flames being out, people just seem to say no spoilers in their, like, I don't watch any dedicated book videos to it because I'm not stupid, I'm not going to get spoiled. But like, I'll be watching vlogs where they're reading other books and then they're getting A Court of Silver Flames in like their packages, and then they spoil the rest of the books and they're like fine with it, and I'm like, no, you've just spoiled the rest of the series. And the other day I was in tears in anger because I was in the middle of Akamath and someone just went and I'm still in the middle of Akamath, and someone just went and spoiled it because they were talking about Court of Silver Flames straight after saying there'll be no spoilers. Just because you didn't spoil the book you're holding, you've spoiled the series. It wasn't even like a dedicated video, it was just a random vlog. Like, stop. So I didn't enjoy this as much as I could have. I gave it a 4-star. So on Instagram, someone was posting A Court of Silver Flames fan art. There's loads of it around, it's not really a problem. And then posting in their description, like, please do not post A Court of Silver Flames spoilers. And I'm like, all well and good, but your fan art is spoilers. Maybe not for that book, but for every other book. And for what the synopsis of that book is. I don't know what the synopsis of that book is because I haven't read the series. And don't come for me being like, the book came out in like 2018, you should know. There is no expiry on books. There is no expiry on books. I don't care if this book, I don't care if I'm reading a book that came out in the 60s. I don't want to hear your spoilers for it. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. And I'm really, really annoyed about it. And that's my rant. I will stop ranting now. And I swear to God, I've unsubbed from everybody who has spoiled this series for me now. And I will continue to do so. Don't do it. Don't. Okay, that was very negative. We're not going to do that again. Sorry, everyone. Moving on to higher happy notes. Well, not really, because I'm about to give a bad review. But I read Say Yes by Lucia Franco, which I read the first book of. This is like a novella continuing from Hush Hush by Lucia Franco, which I read in December of 2020. I loved Hush Hush. I gave it 5 stars. It was the first smut I'd read, and so I felt a little bit uncomfortable talking about it, but I really, really enjoyed it. And it what started my spam of smut at the beginning of this year. But Say Yes was this novella that continued in the aftermath of those books following our main couple. I gave this a 2-star. I think it was very offensive, if I'm being completely honest. It's about them getting or trying to get engaged because she doesn't want to, but he does want to. And in the end, I just felt that she was so pressured into saying yes that it felt so toxic and manipulative and gross. So I couldn't enjoy that. I gave it 2-star. I think it was a bit unnecessary of a book anyway, and I should have just left it alone after the first book. So if you read Hush Hush, maybe just don't bother continuing with the novella. It really isn't worth your time, if I'm being completely honest. I'm now going to tell you about a book I loved, and shockingly enough, it is Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. But I have hated Cassandra Clare's writing since the beginning. I have now read 5 books from her, and 4 of them I've disliked. I don't enjoy the writing. I don't think it's good, but the Mortal Instruments that I've read compared to the Infernal Devices is a world of difference away. This was a 4.5. It was so close to being a 5. The reason it isn't is because the storyline, it just isn't my favourite. I'm here purely for the romance triangle that's going on, and I'm obsessed with it. Jem, Will and Tessa have my heart. I love them all, and I don't know how this series ends, and I'm so close to being spoiled on the daily. Honestly, people keep putting up reviews on Goodreads for Chain of Gold. Once again, I'm going to tell you, stop saying in your spoiler-free reviews that aren't marked as spoilers who gets together in this series. Thank you. It spoils the series. I need to calm down. Honestly, it's getting me so mad. I'm just scrolling through my Goodreads with like spoilers. But I've somehow managed to avoid how this series ends, so I'm going to have to read the last book really quickly. Do you like this very lonely tab? I was not tabbing this book. I've not tabbed any of the Cassandra Clare books, but I'm going to tell you right now, this scene, if anyone would like to reference their own books, it starts on page 209. I've read it like 4 or 5 times, and I've walked past this book and just picked up the book and started reading this scene multiple times. I adore it. It's like my favourite scene ever. It's so cute. It makes me so happy. I'm obsessed. I cannot wait to see where this goes. I can't talk about it. It's a sequel. But The Infernal Devices overall is perfection, and it has such a great love triangle. I'm not a lover of love triangles, but this one is done so well. Props to Cassandra Clare, honestly. I could stan if she's not careful. I could stan. The next book that I read was Unchosen by Catherine Blair. This is like a apparently feminist, I'm not sure about that, but it's a book that's like a zombie apocalypse, but it's got a twist to it. It has like pirates and everything. It's absolutely fabulous. I gave this a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. It's basically, a zombie apocalypse is kind of like Bird Box, you know, where if you see them and you make eye contact, you turn into one. I don't quite remember what happened, which is kind of bad, but it's been a while. It was just like a really nice easy read that just kind of went quite fast, and I haven't had to retain any information from it. I really remember enjoying the journey. It was a really good YA book. The next book that I read was Even If We Break by Marieke Nijkamp. I've done a recent vlog, I will link it up here and down there, where I read this and discussed my feelings. So you'll see more information over there if you choose to, but this is the worst book I have ever read. I'm going to be completely honest about it. I DNF'd it, and then Connor read it and was saying that he was enjoying it. He didn't by the end, but he was saying he was enjoying it. I was like, you know what, I'll pick it back up. It's a short read. I've now learnt my lesson that when I've DNF'd something, don't pick it back up. I've never done it before and I'll never be doing it again. A group of friends go to the woods to play like, I don't know what they're called, but like a Dungeons and Dragons-esque game. Then they start to have bad things happen to them. I can't even talk to you about how much I hate this book. There are plot lines that are started and never finished. They're just completely left as if they never existed. The amount of cheese is disgusting. This book is so cheesy. The lines that are said made me want to throw up in 2013 language. Okay, not a fan. The characters, they've got a lot of diversity in the characters and a lot of like disabled rap and stuff. That is my only positive to this book. That is it. Also, the characters have no difference between them at all. I didn't know who was talking, and I listened to an audiobook in the end who had different voice characters, and I still had no idea who was who. Like, how does that even happen? How does that even happen? A person shouldn't be different because of their disability. You should still have a different personality, and I felt like it was just so reliant on the disability to be the difference between the characters that it was like upsetting. I don't know. I really wasn't pleased with it. The next book that I read was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is heavy. It's a really heavy book. I got on the hype with everybody else and decided that I needed to read this, and I'm glad I did. I gave it a 4-star. It's great. It follows this maiden, and I can't remember her name, Poppy. A maiden called Poppy who is destined to be given to the gods, and she decides that she wants to fall in love with her god. And Hawk is her guard, and there's a romance. Now, everybody reads it for the romance, and the romance was good. I enjoyed it. But to be honest, the magic system and the political system and the rebellion and the society in this book was juicy. I want to see more of that. I don't even care about this romance. I am so there for every other part of this book. It is a really well written and well developed fantasy. My criticism to it would be, I call it self-published syndrome, when books like this they could do with going over with an editor and having a lot of stuff chopped out. It happens to be in a lot of self-published books, and I never lower a rating because of it. Because it just seems to be in a lot of self-published books. I think it's just something that happens. I think maybe publishers are a lot more strict about what gets cut out. So I think a lot of this could have been removed from the book, and it was unnecessarily long, to be honest, because it's 600 odd pages, and didn't need to be. But overall, this book is really good. I'm excited to see where the next one goes, where the rest of the series takes me. Marked by PC and Kristen Cass. This is a beat-up copy. This is my copy from when I was a teenager. I read this series. I never quite finished it because it was still being published, and I kind of grew out of that age. But I absolutely adored this series. It's a vampire, like, academy-esque thing. So they're all in this school, and if you become a vampire, you go there. And there's different vampires, and you work your way through school to become a fully fledged vampire. But in school, you are a fledgling, I believe. And we follow Zoe Redbird as she gets marked by a vampire, hence the title, and she has to move into the, what's it called? House of Night, because that's the House of Night series. And she learns the art of being a vampire, I suppose. It's such a trashy book, like so trashy. But because I have the nostalgia of being a teenager, I'm enjoying it anyway. I would not enjoy this if this was the first time I'd read it. Not in any way, shape or form. And I do want to say that this is a problematic book. I gave it a 3-star because my enjoyment was a lot higher than that, but I couldn't give it any higher than a 3-star without feeling guilty, because this has so many problems. I did talk about this in a vlog where I talked about more of that, so I will link that above and down below. But I would recommend that you check out some reviews about that because it's not ideal. The next book is a very popular one, which I have a controversial opinion about, and that is Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. I also had this in a vlog. Same vlog as the last one, so you'll find it linked below. I gave a lot of my opinions, and I can't quite remember as many of them as I did back then, so I would recommend you check that out, especially if you want an entertaining rant. But we will try our best. This is the second in the Diviners series, so I cannot give you a synopsis, but the Diviners is set in New York in the 20s. We follow Evie O'Neill as she finds out she's a diviner and what her capabilities are. This one, being the second in the series, got a 1.5 from me. The beginning of the book started with meeting new characters that we haven't met before, and I cannot stand when a book that you has such lovable characters starts by introducing you to new ones, without easing you in, without making these characters likeable from the beginning and just assuming you know who they are even though you've never met them before. The characters were rubbish, to be honest. They were underdeveloped all the way through. The book became a focus on them instead of Evie, and I don't know why you do that when Evie is clearly the only thing good coming out of this book. And even Evie was ruined, to be honest, in this, because they changed her personality type and made her an absolute brat. I didn't care about the storyline because the storyline revolves around sleeping and dream worlds. I don't want to say much more. And it was the same thing over and over again. Over and over and over again. Just read it on repeat. And I don't understand what it was needed. Why was this made? Why? The end had nothing happen. There was no, like, resolution. There was no fix. It was purely just setting up for future books, and somehow this seems to be a lot of people's favourites, and I mean, they must have seen the beauty in it that I can't see, but I definitely can't see it, and I'm not amused by this book at all. If it wasn't for the fact I owned the rest of the series and I love Diviners so much, I would be giving up, because this book has absolutely ruined everything. I hate it. On the opposite scale, we have The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was a real surprise for me. I went in thinking it was a thriller. It is not. It is purely like a murder mystery based around rich kids, basically. A real pleasant surprise, honestly. I compared it to Knives Out when I was reading it without having seen anyone else make that comparison. So when I went afterwards and had a look at the reviews, a lot of people had compared it to it, but also a lot of people had gone a bit on the opposite spectrum, saying I can't stand people comparing this to Knives Out because it is nothing like it. So that is interesting. I think that's one of the things that when you read it, you'll decide what you think. But Knives Out is a pretty popular film, so if you haven't seen it, I recommend that too. It's amazing. But I really, really enjoyed this. It isn't anything out of this world. The end is quite a funny revelation. This is the first in a series or duology, I'm not sure which one. But I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great, easy read. I finished it really quickly. I mean, I couldn't trust anybody, and that was very stressful. I hate reading about characters I don't trust, but I didn't trust anyone in this, which made it all the more fun, to be honest. And I enjoyed this a lot. If you haven't picked this up and you are a fan of like a YA mystery, I 100% recommend it. It is a lot of fun, something easy to read, fast-paced. The writing style is great. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Another book that I read was The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor. I read this, and I have done a Instagram review if you'd like to go see that. I'll link my Instagram here and down below, and you can check out like an in-depth review of it. But The Burning Girls is based in this little town where it's like a community where everybody knows everybody's business. And it's something like, I can't remember the dates, but 500 years ago, 8 martyrs were burnt to death. 30 years ago, 2 teenagers vanished without trace. And 2 months ago, the vicar committed suicide. And we're following our protagonist, who is a priest herself. And she has to move to this place where the priest hung himself and become the new priest. And basically, you follow the mystery of discovering what happened between the 2 girls who vanished, the vicar, the 8 martyrs. I mean, there was a lot of good going for it, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 3.5 overall. I really enjoyed the writing style. The only thing I'd say is, like, this is like a thriller horror more than just thriller. But at times, it wasn't very suspenseful. I don't know, I hoped for a little bit more suspense. I believe I also had this in a reading vlog. No, I didn't. I scrapped that reading vlog, so never mind, scrap what I said. But I really enjoyed this for the atmosphere and the aesthetic, but it wasn't my favourite CJ Tudor book so far. So I'm very torn on this, obviously, as you can see, but the rating I gave it was, I think, actually a 3.75, not a 3.5. I was so torn. At the end as well, we get this like twist. You know when you get a twist and you think to yourself, that's not guessable, like you never hinted towards that. I feel that was the twist in this ending, but then I also saw one of my friends say that it was a predictable twist, so I'm thinking that maybe I just didn't pick up on it and I need to reread it to see if that is truly the case for me like I first thought. So I'm not 100%, but overall I do have to say that it was good, and it was definitely more horror than her other books. But it wasn't my favourite, and if you were going to pick up any CJ Tudor book, I would definitely recommend The Other People. Still recommend this, still 3.75, but I would definitely recommend The Other People first. The next thing that I read was City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. This is another book that I've tried from Victoria Schwab. I keep trying, or V.E. Schwab, you know, all of her books. I keep trying, and I keep getting disappointed. So we tried another one, and it was okay. This follows Cassidy Blake, and she's a young girl, and her parents are doing this like ghost show, and so she has to go to Edinburgh, but she can see ghosts, and Edinburgh is known as the City of Ghosts, hence the title of the book. And so she goes there and starts seeing a bunch of ghosts, and it's kind of her journey around Edinburgh with ghosts, and her best friend's a ghost. It was a middle grade, it was fine, it was nice, there was nothing wrong with it, there was nothing intriguing about it either. Like, I have no intrigue to continue this series. I might, but I'm probably not going to. Me and Vishwa are struggling at the moment to connect. I'm really not feeling the writing style. It's not my favourite, and I know so many people love her, so I'm trying, but I'm really just not connecting myself with that writing style. I think I have A Darker Shade of Magic left to try, and I think that's it. Next I read Swimming Lessons by Lily Reinhardt, and I'm not very experienced in poems. I've read a couple of collections, so I can't really say that this is an accurate rating compared to others. I can just give you my opinion. I gave it a 4-star. It's like a poem that goes through loads of poems, obviously, a collection of poems that go through like heartbreak and losing someone and love. And it was dark, it was raw, it was sad. There was a lot of trigger warnings, so I would check them out. And like, at the time, I don't know, it just really affected me. Like, I really enjoyed listening to them. There was something about it, and it was really good. It didn't quite resonate with me. I've not really experienced heartbreak like she's experienced heartbreak, that's for sure. But I did enjoy the listening and hearing the raw passion that was clearly in the words, and that was nice. But I don't have anything else I can say because I am not a poem connoisseur by any means. Next, I read The Ravens by Cass Morgan and Danielle Page. This follows a sorority who are actually a coven of witches, just disguised as a sorority, which has made me now believe that every sorority is a coven of witches disguised. This was fine. Yeah, again, it was fine. There was like a bad guy, and they had to defeat the bad guy. It was fine. I gave it a 3-star. Overall, I think that it was way too focused on boy drama. I wanted to see witches and witch life, but instead I just saw two girls fighting over the same guy. So that was my thoughts on that. It was fine. It was just a bit of a letdown compared to what I was hoping it was going to be. The next book that I read was like a collection of novellas, and that is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. This is technically like 0.5 in the Throne of Glass series, depending on how you decide you'd like to read them. I decided to read this first because that's how the order is for the tog along. I really, really enjoyed this. As a first dive into the Throne of Glass series, perfect. I really got to know Selena Sadothian perfectly. I feel like I completely understand her character. I've seen her struggles, I've seen her heartbreak, I've seen everything that she's gone through, and we've now ended this book where it starts, which is Endovia. The first book in the Throne of Glass series starts in what's it called? Edothian or something? Well, that's where this ends, so you start Throne of Glass where this ends, and I'm really glad to go in with this prior knowledge. So I think this was the perfect way to read it for me, and I'm really glad I did. So, great book, gave it a 4-star, really enjoyed all the stories. Okay, the next book is a really controversial one, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Now, before reading this, I had seen nothing but 5 stars, and I thought this would be the exact same. I thought this would be 5-star, easy for me, but I gave it a 3. Now, it's like about this orphanage and it's magical, and this man goes to check that they're following all the procedures. I don't want to talk too much about it. But, first of all, the man who goes there is boring, and the point is he's supposed to have a long character arc that makes him a better person, you love him, and The problem is, you're reading the inner monologue of this man, and he's so boring. I think his name's Linus or something. But for the first half of the book, he's had 0 development yet. He gets all of his development in the second half. And I'm sorry, reading, from his perspective was the worst thing ever. I was so bored having to read about this man because, let's be honest, he was just rubbish to read about. He became great, and I liked him in the second half, but I didn't want to read that. I didn't want to read about that for 200 pages. No, absolutely not. So it put me in a bad mood from the start. Another thing that I had a problem with was, as well in the first half, was it was just so info dumpy. You couldn't get to fall in love with these children because you were purely learning about them from a file, and meeting them wasn't magical. They just seemed a bit bratty, to be honest, from the beginning. The whole thing was info dump, and I remember the exact page that it stopped being like that, and that was page 214 was when I started thinking this is actually an okay book. But before that, I couldn't take it. It was like a 2-star. It was really disappointing to me because if that info dump hadn't happened, this could have been a 5-star for me. But I'm not seeing that passion that everyone else had reflected anywhere before the 200-page mark. And sorry, but half of a book for me is not good enough to give it a 5-star if half of the book is good. However, I will say from the second half, it was whimsical. It was great. I loved the village. I loved the island vibe. I loved that it reflected real life problems into a book. This is an adult's book, but it reads like a middle grade. So they put real life problems into this book, into a whimsical, magical land, but it makes you think of real world problems like discrimination. And that was really well put in naturally. I love that. I also love that it's queer because that is never not a good thing in a book. We always want to see that. Really enjoyed it. The next thing that I read was The Captive by Deborah O'Connor. This is like one of those dystopian future world things where prisoners are kept inside the houses of the families who they committed the crime against. So in our in our story, we have Jem, who is he's arrested for the murder of this woman's husband. And so he has to live in her house as a prisoner in a cage, and she has to see him every day. It's a very peculiar thing, because I wouldn't want to see my husband's murderer on the daily and have to make him food and do his laundry, but nonetheless, I enjoyed the concept. And I think that if this book hadn't been advertised as a thriller, I would have liked it a lot more than I did. I gave it a 3-star. This has not got enough suspense scenes in it for me to consider it a thriller. I know thrillers can be very different and not all of them have to be suspenseful, I know. But it was more of a mystery than a thriller, and if I'd expected that, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. Second of all, the thing that happens at the end with what happens to Jem and how the story plays out is predictable, and I guessed it from reading the synopsis. I knew what was going to happen in this book. I hoped I'd be wrong, but I wasn't. So that wasn't going well for it. But the one thing that was very unpredictable, there was a murder, and the reveal of what happened with this murderer was not at all obvious. In my eyes, if you're going to hint to what the answer to a mystery is, you have to involve some hints, or involve at least the character in the story. You can't just spring someone from midair and be like, boom, there's your answer. I'm trying to do this as spoiler-free as possible. It can be kind of difficult, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, if you're going to hint something, it has to be hinted to properly. You can't just throw in a random ending and be like, haha, you didn't guess it. Well, yeah, it's not possible. And not that I want to guess, but I also want it to be a realistic ending, and I would like to be shocked, not, well, how was I supposed to guess that, or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So I wasn't best pleased by the end, because I thought it was unfair and a bit of a cop-out. Okay, so the last 4 books I have to talk about are all smut, and I do get a little bit shy talking about smut, so we're going to bypass that and just pretend that I'm not shy, okay? We're going to try. But the first smut that I have to talk about isn't really smut, and it's kind of traumatic. It's called The Wild, and it's by Kay Webster. This is like one of those books that's banned off Amazon and has to be sold off the website of the actual author. I watch More Mary, who is like a beauty YouTuber and a booktuber, and she reads a lot of taboo romances, and I'm in her like Facebook group, and people were glorifying this book to make it sound like it was really good. It was taboo, but it was really good, and I don't think people captured how traumatic this book is, and it was traumatic. I almost threw up. Like, I'm sensitive, but this was a bit much. What happens is there's this famous people, they're like, you know, famous in their own way, you doesn't really focus on that at all, but they decided they want to start a new life, and so they have bought a cabin up in the woods, and they are travelling there. It's a mum, a dad, and their daughter. On the journey, they crash, and the mother dies, like, impaled on a branch, and it's graphic, and I was like, whoa, that was sudden. Okay, cool. And so obviously it's in the middle of winter, there's snow everywhere, and the dad and the daughter have to find shelter, and it spans over like years, and they're like stuck in this forest or something, and building shelter, building a home with pieces of this camper van that they're driving and wood that they're finding around the place, and they're having to hunt animals. It's a very interesting on the survival aspect. I love survival stories. I wish that it had just been this survival story, because that survival part was written really, really well. However, what the actual smut part of this book is, and I hate calling it smut because gross, is the dad and the daughter fall in love and begin a sexual relationship. It's to the point where they have a child. Like, I know that could be considered spoilers, but I feel like I have to say it. It's not okay, and it's approached with the knowledge that it's wrong, but the way it's written is so dark, and it's not nice. Like, especially the sex scenes are hard to read. You're reading about a dad and his daughter. They're not easy to read. It's not a fetish thing. It's a dark read. I cried repeatedly in this book. I knew that it had dark content, but I didn't know the extent of it, and I would not recommend this book to anybody. If it interests you, fine, read everything about it. I gave it a 4-star. I thought it was a really well written book, but I will never reread this book. It is traumatic. I didn't feel good for a few days after reading it. I read it in one sitting, and after it I just didn't feel well. I didn't want to read it. It made me feel really funny. I didn't like it, but the book was great, and it made you think of things in such a thought-provoking way. It's really hard to talk about and describe. I wish I hadn't read it, but it was a good read in terms of the way it was written and what it said. The content was not nice. So as you can see, I'm very torn on this book. I don't know what to say to you. If you're interested in it, look up every trigger. Maybe look up a wrap-up. There's something that happens in the end, like a twist, and it helps a little bit, but while you were reading it, it didn't help you. So maybe you'd want to read about the twist first, and that might help how you feel. I don't know. I'm just trying to help you out here if you decide to read that. I'm not surprised it's banned everywhere. The 3 books that I read other than this, I'm going to talk about all together because they are A Touch of Taboo series by Katie Robert. And there's 3 books in this series. We have Your Dad Will Do, My Dad's Best Friend, and Gifting Me to His Best Friend. So the first book, Your Dad Will Do, I gave her 5 stars. There's no plot to these books, so I'm just going to talk about it. I could read about these characters all day. I could read about their relationship forever. The steamy scenes were fabulous. The characters were great. I can't say they're the best developed characters because it was a very short book. It's like 190 pages. But I will tell you, they were great written pages. I enjoyed every second of my read. I would reread this in a heartbeat. It was amazing. We had My Dad's Best Friend, and this I gave a 3-star, mainly because it included daddy kink that just isn't my kink at all. Especially when it's like your dad's best friend. To call your dad's best friend daddy felt a bit uncomfortable to me. It also had rape kink in it, which is, I don't like reading rape scenes. I like to check my trigger warnings. I don't want to read about them, and I certainly don't want to read about kink of those scenes. It was approached well. It was, consensual. It was discussed beforehand, but I didn't enjoy reading about them anyway. They made me feel a bit uncomfortable. So for me, it was just a 3-star because it wasn't my favourite. I think if those kinkier things, you'd love it, but they're not for me, and so I didn't enjoy reading about them. This is uncomfortable to talk about. I feel so awkward. And the final one in this series was Gifting Me to His Best Friend. I gave it a 4 stars. They're in a snowy mountain. I don't know, it was just really nice. I enjoyed the characters. They had a great friendship. Why am I reading smut and talking about the friendship? I don't know, but it was nice. They had a nice friendship. I liked reading about it. I thought they got on well and they made me laugh. I liked the way it ended. It actually wrapped up like a love story, and that was nice instead of just the smut and there's no story. It actually had a story to it, which was really, really nice. I would recommend this A Touch of Taboo books to anybody. I would just say pick which ones you want to read based on what you like in your smut scenes. And I think there is something for everybody here. Katie Robert is definitely going to become one of my favourite authors, I think, of the taboo romance genre. And yeah, I really enjoyed those books. But that is everything, and I'm so glad I don't have to talk about them because I'm blushing. Thank you so much for watching. If you did make it to the end of this video, I cannot believe you did it. Well done, honestly. And I shall see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.